Welcome to Healing America with Dr. Jim White. Jim has been investing, coaching executives, and turning around companies for over 30 years. Now your host, Dr. Jim White.
Good evening, good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to Healing America, and I am Jim White. We have a special guest with us this evening. I have been looking forward to talking to this person for several weeks now. And in the way of introduction, she's an international speaker, and you get ready for this resume. She's the host of Move the Ball podcast, and for my regular viewers, you know that I normally don't do this, but her resume is so strong, I had to make some notes here to get it all in. So she is the host of Move the Ball podcast, which is also the name of her book. She had that book released in 2013 and a second release in 2018. She is a Army lawyer. She's a Fortune 500 executive. And you ready for this? She has 7 degrees. 7 degrees. She's a leadership expert, and her book, Move the Ball, is, as you could tell by the title, which it took me a few minutes to figure that out. It's about football and leadership skills. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Miss Jen Garrett. Jen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jim. It's a pleasure to be on today.
It is my pleasure. And look at you in your car in Southern California. We were talking offline. So I tell you, leadership, football, you love football. So how did you start there? How your interest in football? How did that come about?
Great question. So I grew up in the city of Chicago, and I was a 70s baby, but growing up in the 80s, I had the 85 Bears. That was a great time to be a Bears fan back then. Maybe not so much at the moment, but back then it was great times. And I really just fell in love with the game because I had 2 parents that were diehard football fans. I'm an only child, so no brothers that played football or anything like that. But my parents, every Sunday, there we would sit at the TV watching the Bears game. And what really intrigued me, so football is a fast-paced game, so there's excitement because of the dynamics of the sport, but what really intrigued me about the game was that there were these instances where you'd have the Bears down by a few touchdowns and they'd come back to pull off the win. That didn't always happen, but it happened, from time to time, and it was neat to see. And that's not unique to the Bears by any means, but that's what I saw as a kid. And so I just really got interested in the game at a young age, at 4, as I'll say. And I've just followed it all through my life and really studied it in depthly, not just from the plays and that stuff, but also just the lessons that you can take from all of sports, not just football, but football was the sport that I was following, and how they apply off the field for us to be successful in our careers, in business, and in life in general.
Mm. I remember that when it comes to mind, I was thinking about Jim McMahon, right?
Yes, the funky QB.
I tell you what, yeah, I never will forget that season. I am somewhat of a football fan, but I'm not as avid as you are. But far as lessons learned in sports, and I love. I'm an ex-aerobatic pilot, and anything to do with concentration, vision, focus, decision making, and all of those things. So I love it. So that's what led you to write the book, was this love of sports. So what's the book? Move the Ball. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so Move the Ball is a book, as you mentioned, that talks about football, and it draws parallels to football and life, and how you can take the competitive athlete mentality and apply it beyond football to be successful. And so what sparked me to write the book was I've always had a passion for writing, first and foremost. And so I told myself many, many years ago that I was going to write a book, and I'd had different thoughts on topics and stuff. And back in 2011, I was at a Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers game. It was the playoffs. It was 17 degrees out. I write about this in the book. And so there we are in Soldier Field, freezing our butts off. And my team is yet again losing. Not surprising when they play the Packers. And so the Bears are trying to make a fourth quarter comeback. So they have the ball. They're driving down the field. It's now 4th down. And the coach, Lovie Smith, takes a timeout. And it was in that moment where I
I
started
remember.
thinking about how in our lives, we also have fourth down moments, and we have to figure out what plays we're going to run. Are we going to go for it? Are we going to punt? In the case of the football game, they had to go for it. So, what play are you going to run? And so it really just made me thinking about all of the lessons that football had taught me. And so that's where I got the inspiration to write the book. And so the Bears did not win that game. The Packers went on to win the Super Bowl. And on my way home, I lived in Michigan at the time. I started just jotting down all these ideas that I had about the parallels and the lessons I had learned. And so that was kind of the beginning of what sparked the book.
Uh, I love that fourth down analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Decisions got to be made in
Yes.
life. I love that. I was just taking a moment to reflect on that because that was very powerful. At fourth down moments, the decisions that come in front of us, and sometimes you can plan, and sometimes you just got to make a decision, and
Yes.
and go. So you're also a Army lawyer,
I
major.
am. Yes. Still serving in the Michigan Army National Guard.
Yeah. So, okay, got to know. Okay, we got this lady that love of football, and she's an Army lawyer. She's in the National Guard. She is a major, and for the folks who's not familiar with that, that is a big deal. That's a big deal. So,
Yes.
how did you decide to go that path?
Yeah, I had always had an interest in serving ever since I was young. And I also wanted to be an aviator. By the way, I grew up wanting to be an Air Force pilot. And I was going down that path. And then I had a number of people tell me, well, watch out for those recruiters. They'll tell you whatever they want you to hear. So just be careful. And that spoofed me enough to kind of pause and say, maybe not. And so as I continued on in my educational and work careers, I had still wanted to serve. I've always had that desire. And so after law school, I decided, and I had an ex who wasn't my ex at the time, kind of facilitate that process, get me in touch with a judge advocate recruiter, a JAG recruiter, to start talking about serving and being a member of the Army. And so that's kind of how that process begun. But I've always had a desire to serve. And so it was a great choice for me, and it's something that I've really come to enjoy over the years, being an Army judge advocate.
And that's in Illinois. So that's where
I'm in Michigan.
your unit's in Michigan. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you also spent some time and in the Fortune 500s. I'm just going down these notes. And I'm going to put all these pieces together.
Sure.
And the competitive spirit. Would you call yourself competitive?
Absolutely. In a good way, a healthy competitive.
A healthy competitive. I see that. So Fortune 500. What if you to the extent that you can share and comfortable? What field?
Yeah, so I worked primarily aerospace and defense industry. I worked for big companies such as General Electric and the Boeing company. Did a number of different roles. I started off in engineering, leadership, management roles with Boeing after I had worked for the Navy right out of college as a civil servant. And then I had switched over to working for the Boeing company in engineering management, started running programs for Boeing, and then kind of crossed over in the business development arena. And then when I moved to GE, I continued on more on the business side of the house in a commercial capacity, doing strategic planning, facilitating technology development, working with a lot of military agencies, DoD, Department of the Navy, AFRL, ONR, and all of those agencies on technology development programs.
So along the way, you got 7 degrees.
I did, yes.
What are they?
Yes. So 2 engineering bachelors, 1 in electrical engineering, and then 1 in biomedical engineering. And then I have an MBA, a master's in communication and leadership. I have the Juris Doctor. And then after law school, you can get what's called a Master of Law degree, an LLM. And so I have an LLM in business transactions, which focuses on like corporate structure, SEC regulation, M&A stuff. And then I have an LLM in tax also.
Wow.
It's a lot.
What an inspiration. So here we are, right in the middle of, I'm going to say right in the middle of this unfortunate COVID-19. Businesses are challenged. Your platform now, I mean, you are an international speaker. You're I'm going to use the word motivational speaker, and with the background such as yours, I mean, why not? I mean, we need you every place because I don't know of a business today that cannot use some positive direction. And go back to your metaphor, that fourth down situation. We got a lot of business leaders today that are facing fourth down situations. Can I make payroll? Say that you're sitting on this wonderful stage and you're speaking to 500 small business owners. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, I think it's important to focus on your people and the relationships and the connection to your people. I mean, obviously, people are focused on, well, how can I drive sustainable growth, right? How can I survive till next week? But you also have to not lose sight of your people and maintaining connection to them, because your people are, it's cliche, but they are your greatest asset. They're the people that are going to get stuff done. And so you want to make sure that you are being compassionate. Everyone is struggling during this time. You may not see their struggle because they're not outwardly expressing it, but there are people that are having mental challenges. You know, their mental health and well-being is compromised just because we're under lockdown in certain states, and that's continuing to increase, right? People's kids are at home, so it's harder to, you're not as productive during the day because your kids are at home and you're trying to manage that and their school and requirements along with your job. So I think one of the biggest things is make sure you're staying connected to your people, checking on them, making sure that they're doing okay, and also acknowledging and appreciating them. At our core, we as human beings need to feel valued and that we're cared about. And I think even more in this environment, as leaders, you have to do that. And there are a lot of things that I could have said to answer your question. What would I say, to leaders? And I feel like there's a lot of other people out there talking about the business stuff. And I think it's important to, let's not forget about the people too, because that's what's really important. That's what's going to help drive your day-to-day activities and making sure that you are able to continue forward.
Mm-hmm. Understand that. Good advice. Let me ask you this. And this is a question I'm about to ask is firsthand experience with a lot of different companies that I'm involved in and other businesses that I talk to and coach from time to time. We're seeing employees that may be underperforming prior to COVID-19. And everything that you said, I absolutely agree with. Now, during this COVID-19, we're seeing a situation where people are using this as a victim role, if you will. And I'm going to be choosing my words very carefully here because I agree with everything you said. But there's two sides of the coin there, whereby we've got to take responsibility, and we understand, and I agree with you that the leaders have got to be compassionate. And I certainly agree with you with the mental health, because my PhD is in psychology. So I understand the mental health aspect of it in this spirit. So I'm looking at a situation just today, looking at a situation where we got some employees that are that have been less than truthful, but yet taking this situation and trying to use it where anything that you say, well, I'm stressed out, I've got this, but they've had this behavior before. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
So what do we do about that?
Yeah, I mean, you still have to handle the performance management aspect of things, right? Driving accountability and making sure there's a balance between being compassionate and not letting people use it as an excuse as to why they can't get things done. And I think that really comes down to the relationships that you have with people, so you can recognize when are people using it to kind of skate by, if you will. And that's going to be based upon your knowledge of those employees prior to COVID as well, right? But then it's having those conversations. If you are concerned about an individual's performance, and you have to have those critical conversations, those unpleasant ones, and really make sure that you know what's going on. And if you think that they're just trying to, make excuses, that you got to call them out on it too. And there's a way to do it so that it is polite and respectful, and it achieves what you're trying to get at. So there is definitely a balance, but you've got to balance that compassionate behavior with still driving accountability and performance management.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. What's next for Jen? What's your next thing? 7 more degrees or
no? No more degrees. I think I'm done with that. 7 is enough, and 7's a good number. Lucky 7, right?
I think it's a great number. So, are you still speaking today in your profession? You still got the book, you got your podcast, how are you faring under these COVID-19 Zoom days in connecting with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, Zoom technology has been great for us to stay connected to people when we can't physically see one another. And so I know some people kind of get all zoomed out. I'm used to being on Zoom calls all day, so it doesn't bother me. So how am I doing in my business? To answer your question, yeah, I'm doing a lot of virtual speaking. So, you're not going to see me on stage in front of 5,000 people probably for the next 3-6 months, right? Depending on how things go with the vaccine and this pandemic. So Zoom has allowed me to continue to share my message and to really help inspire and motivate and help organizations while we're going through this pandemic. Also, you mentioned my podcast. So my focus is, I'm in the middle of a fourth quarter break. So our podcast will kick back up the day after the Super Bowl. So I'm getting ready for that, and I'm excited to have some new episodes out there and some more content. I'm also working with a lot of businesses on how do you tackle challenges tied to COVID right now, such as you've got most of your workforce is remote. And so some companies are doing that well because they're used to having that infrastructure in place to handle that. Others, it's new for them. And so there's a couple of things. One, how do you stay connected and lead your teams effectively? How do you make sure that you're being most productive in this remote environment? And when I say that, it's not just about employees that might be trying to use excuses as to why they can't get stuff done. Sometimes your processes need to change, and the way you're handling the day-to-day needs to shift because we're in this remote environment. So do you have the optimal processes in place right now to handle this new environment? And then the last part of that is, there are employees that are struggling because they're used to going to work and coming home, and they need that physical separation, and they're used to that. So now there's no on and off switch, so to speak, between work and home life. So they're really struggling with that. Work-life balance is a term that gets thrown out quite a bit. And so giving employees tools and resources to be able to maintain some level of balance and help with that well-being piece, as well as helping employers from a cultural standpoint adjust so that you can facilitate that work-life balance in these situations.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. So we'll go back to the Army and the National Guard, if I may. Is that the intent? Is that a career? You think you're going to hang with that for years to come?
That is my plan, to make a career out of it. So we'll ultimately see what happens at the end of the day. But that is my current plan: is to do at least 20 years of service.
Yeah. And to that end, in the National Guard, what is some of your units? What the missions? What are you involved in?
Yeah, great question. So with COVID, I was actually activated for a little over 3 months to help with the COVID standing up back in March, when the world was kind of in chaos and trying to figure out what all of this meant. And we're seeing, ICUs at capacity, and they needed to stand up new facilities. A lot of National Guard units were getting activated to go help with that support. And so my unit was also activated. And so I live in Chicagoland, but I'm in the Michigan National Guard. So I got called up, and they said, "Hey, we need you." And so I packed up my stuff, drove in my car to Michigan, thinking I'd be gone for a few weeks, and I was gone for over 3 months. So we had, COVID stuff that we were working on. We're still supporting some COVID stuff now, not quite as much as we were back over the summer and the springtime frame. So that's a big thing. And then I just have my normal day-to-day activities that we're doing from a normal. My unit is focused on logistics, so that's really what our mission sets are around.
Mm-hmm. Talking about logistics, and to the extent that we could even discuss this, I couldn't help but go to the very promising vaccines for COVID, and I was just thinking about logistics, and I've been reading about the role that the military will play in the distribution. Did you see that being coming into the National Guard mission, to the extent that we know?
So I haven't seen anything yet about the transportation of the vaccines and the National Guard's role in that. I can see that happening, certainly, just as we're trying to, mass distribute. And obviously, there's some questions about some vaccines have to be refrigerated or kept at a certain temperature, other ones do not. But I can absolutely see the National Guard getting involved and trying to administer that, because we're trying to get that obviously out to a wide population as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I'm also, with the time we have, if I may, just first say thank you for your service. I am a old Army guy myself. I did 2 tours in Vietnam in the mid '60s, and I got out in the Army in '71. And where I'm going with this, when I was surprised when I got my acceptance letter to Georgia Tech, then I went in the National Guard. So I was in a National Guard unit in Georgia for a while when I was going through school. And what a great combination: the GI Bill, going to school, and being able to being in the Guard unit. So I have a lot of respect. So again, thank you for your service, and thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're quite welcome. And the remaining time that we have, any other major projects that you would like to share with our viewers? And this will be on our podcast. Is anything that's in the future in 2021 that you'd like to talk about to give people a heads up on?
Yeah, I mean, there is something that I would love to share right now, if that's okay, that
Please.
we're doing through the month of November. So I have a women's group on Facebook called She's Got Game. And the focus of that group, I started it in July of this year. It was really to bring together women, to connect them, to motivate each other, to support each other, to learn and to grow. And so we have about 1,200 amazing women in the group. And what we wanted to do this year, especially to try to make a positive impact, was to do a donation drive where we're raising money in 8 cities across the U.S. to help women and children who are victims of domestic violence. And the reason for that is we know that because of COVID and this lockdown, there's more cases, unfortunately. And so it seemed like there's a lot of focus on organizations helping food banks and homeless shelters, but it didn't seem like there was as much attention on shelters serving domestic violence victims. So we basically put together 8 GoFundMe pages, 1 for each city, to try to raise some money to try to bring a little bit more hope and positivity to people who might need it during this crazy year that we're living in.
I love that, and to please send me more information. And I know my wife is watching this episode, and we were having a discussion just last Sunday. We have a routine, what we call coffee with her and coffee with him in the morning, just to be able to connect before the day gets started. And we were just talking about different initiatives that we wanted to look at and take on. So, and I know we've had the discussions about abuse and how the shelters are not available, and this abuse is continuing to occur with no place to go. So I commend you, and you guys are what you're doing, and anything that we can do to support that, I am all in. So I'll make sure that we find out if we, to make some donations or whatever we need to do. We're in to support that. So I love that. I love that mission. Can we share some GoFundMe, some websites that we can say right now for people to go look at, or Is that a program?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, so what we did was we have one website that has all the links for the
Okay.
GoFundMe pages. And so it's powerandimpact.com. So again, that's powerandimpact.com. And basically you go there and we have 8 GoFundMe links just to share what the cities are. So the
Mhm.
cities we're looking at impacting are Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Jacksonville, Minneapolis, LA and Orange County, and then San Francisco and the greater Bay Area. So we really tried to get a good cross section, across the US to try to make an impact. And so if anyone goes to that powerandimpact.com website, you can click on any of the GoFundMe links and it'll tell you what shelters we're partnering with in each of those areas as well.
Wow. Look at
Oh, perfect.
here. Look at this. We're right there. Women empowered. We care, helping find others. God, I love this, Jen. What a
Thank
great
you.
initiative. What a great initiative, and just great initiative, because it's amazing the abuse that goes on in the normal times, not to mention now where there's no place to go or get help. So again, thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
You're absolutely wonderful. I tell you what, you inspired me. I, I'm the one that just loves the leadership and my tagline is inspiring others to achieve goals, right? And so your background, you're awesome. Again, I'm going to thank you for your service, and we got about 3 minutes left, and it's all yours. Whatever you want to share, please do, in addition to what you've already done.
Sure. Well, thank you. And I guess I'll just share in closing here just some inspirational thoughts or words. I see on social media all the time how people jokingly post about they can't wait for this year to be over and let's just move on to 2021. And we're here in November. We still have over a month to go. So instead of writing the year off, really take an opportunity to reflect and think about how can I still make the most of this year. So 2020 might not have started off or gone on a note that we've planned, but that doesn't mean we just write it off and wait till next year. So you can still do great things in your own life, but you can also make a difference for somebody else too. And we know that there's a lot of people struggling. So whatever you can do, and that doesn't mean you necessarily have to, make a donation. Of course, if you are able to, we'd love to have you participate in our donation drive, but it can be a simple act of kindness, a smile, a, hey, how's it going? Or reaching out to somebody to make sure they're okay. And so I think it's important for us to remember as we're heading into the holidays too, that it's a time to check up on other people, to just make sure that everyone is doing okay. Because there are people that struggle during the holidays, not just because of 2020, right, in COVID, but just in general. So I think it's an important time for us to remember that, and also to think about what can I control and how can I continue to, and I'll use the phrase, move the ball this year to still make the year something that I can be proud of. I mean, each day truly is a gift. I think we've seen a lot of things happen this year that's a reminder how life is short. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. So don't waste each day that's been given. Even if it starts off on a negative note or a chaotic one, you can still control your mindset, your attitude, and your actions and still make it a great day and a great rest of the year.
What great advice, ladies. Jen, it's been a pleasure. I'd love to chat with you in the future, and thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for those wonderful, inspiring words, and have a great rest of the year, and thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure being on the show today. My
pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Jen Garrett, what an inspiration, what a talent, and I can't think of a better way to get ready and take Jen's advice. It's not right off the year. We still got a lot of days left, and there's a lot we can do with it. So I want to thank you for sharing time with us today, and we'll be back next week with another wonderful guest. Until then, be safe and wear your mask. Good evening.
Thank you for your participation and interest in Healing America with Dr. Jim White. To stay in touch with Jim, go to www.healingamerica with Dr. Jim